Hello everyone, this is Story Dive, back again, reviewing, recapping, and breaking down the Easter eggs and references in another episode of American Gods. This time Season 3, Episode 8, titled The Rapture of Burning. As most people know, the Rapture is a reference to the Second Coming in Christianity and those that ascend to heaven, but in this episode I think it's a reference to Selim's rapture as he finds his own personal heaven later in the episode. In case you were wondering, this was not the final episode of the season. There will be 10 episodes this season. To be honest, there probably didn't need to be 10 episodes, but I did enjoy this episode and the previous episode, so it seems like they're saving the best for last. Hopefully the final 2 episodes will be the best episodes of the season. In this episode there were a few interesting plot points, and it seems like we're getting closer to the conclusion of some of the arcs, especially with Tech Boy, Tyr, and Laura Moon, who by the end of the episode finally has everything she needs to kill Wednesday. But let's get to the episode. The show begins in the year 1951 at the Grand Peacock Inn. This is yet another reference to the peacock, which we've seen plenty of so far this season. The Orisha Oshun is connected to the peacock, as is Bilquis, and again we see the peacock here. A man runs into the hotel in distress. He's bleeding and pleads with the receptionist to hide him because he's being pursued by the police. We find out the police are chasing him and roughing him up because he's believed to have engaged in sodomy. In the 1950s, I think almost all states still had sodomy laws. They didn't start to be repealed until the 1960s. The receptionist, who we later find out is also the owner and named Tony, helps to hide the fugitive, and even recalls a memory with one of the cops. They made out at a homecoming dance years ago.
You do remember.
The receptionist is a trans woman, so this officer is a hypocrite, but he vouches for Tony and the police leave. Later we find out that the fugitive is a god, the Chinese rabbit god Turshen. In the credits, this character's name is Tianbo, which is the name of the legendary figure and possible historical figure Hu Tianbo, who became Turshen, the rabbit god and patron of homosexuality in China, according to folklore. Much like the story Turshen tells us, Hu Tianbo fell in love with an imperial inspector, but after confessing his love for a man, was beaten to death. According to the tale, this occurred in Fujian province during the Qing dynasty. After Tianbo was killed, the underworld sent him back as Turshen, the patron of homosexuality, and a temple was erected to him. This American version of Turshen says he's been looking for a new temple, so he makes the Grand Peacock Inn that new temple. Tony doesn't seem to believe Turshen, but to convince her when he leaves, hundreds of butterflies, which are a symbol of young love in China, fly out of his mouth and form the sign of the peacock. In China, the peacock symbolizes dignity and beauty. Moving ahead to present day, Laura and Selim arrive at the Peacock Inn. There is an annual jamboree going on held by the SEELIE Court of America. The SEELIE Court is a classification of more benevolent fairies, and that's why everybody is wearing wings here. And the bartender is another kind of fairy, a leprechaun. It seems to be an LGBTQ convention of sorts. And Laura notices this sign, in which a very stereotypical animated version of the leprechaun she needs to find, Liam Doyle, communicates with her and tells her to find him. At the reception, Laura talks to Tony, who hasn't aged in 70 years. In the credits, Tony is named Tony RYKENER, which is definitely a reference to the real-life 14th century trans woman ELEANOR RYKENER. RYKENER was a sex worker in medieval London who was again arrested for sodomy, at a time when prostitutes performing heterosex acts were not usually arrested, so it seems that Tony here is possibly this early trans figure who survived into the modern day due to being a legendary figure, and now she runs this inn. Or Turshen's magic transformed the inn into a magical place where young lovers stay young. Meanwhile, Tyr is still transporting Shadow to the urgent business that he lied to Shadow about. He says they're going to the Wolf's Den, which he referenced in the note from the previous episode, and I thought this might be the House on the Rock, but apparently it's another roadside attraction. As Shadow begins to suspect something is up, he realizes that Tyr has drugged his coffee. This random guy comes in to help and realizes it's not a seizure, so Tyr goes all Roadhouse and MacGruber on him and rips his throat out. At the bar at the Peacock Inn, Laura meets the leprechaun she came there to find, Liam Doyle, who reveals that actually Wednesday tried to hire him to kill Laura first, before he got Sweeney to do it, so Wednesday destroyed his lucky coin. Laura tries to convince Liam to go to Sweeney's hoard to get Odin's spear, but he refuses at first because he says it's against the Hibernian code. Hibernia is a Latin word for Ireland. However, Liam also seems to want revenge against Wednesday as well, so he agrees to go to Sweeney's hoard if he gets Sweeney's coin as payment. Eventually Laura agrees and Liam vanishes into the Horde. However, he doesn't return in a few seconds as she thought he would, so she thinks he's betrayed her. Back at Mr. World's conference room, Mr. World is back in her Miss World form. Technical Boy is pleading with her to help him fix whatever Bilquis broke inside him, but to do this Miss World unleashes this head grabber on him, transporting him to a digital prison where in his own subconscious he has a conversation with Bilquis, who does a really great impression of him. This was a really fun scene in this episode as Yetide Badaki does a great impression of Bruce Langley here.
I'm not scratching them for you, douche canoe. On account I'm not here.
The subconscious version of Bilquis reveals that she's a subconscious version of Bilquis, and that she simply awakened emotions within Tech Boy, which he's now trying to suppress, and that's causing the glitching. In order to fix this, he will have to find Artifact 1, which I think might be the first tool or piece of technology, and therefore the earliest form of Tech Boy. So with his subconscious Bilquis's help, he manages to free himself from the face grabber so he can find Artifact number 1. While Shadow is passed out, he returns to that snowy area where these shadowy figures are sort of pursuing him. In my last breakdown, I said these might be his ancestors. A few people in the comments said they might be missing children. I don't think it's much of a spoiler at this point that Shadow has caught on to a pattern of missing children in Lakeside, so it's possible that's who these are, but I don't know, they don't quite look like children to me, I could be wrong. In this dream state, he also turns to see Wednesday in his golden-armored Norse god form, and as Wednesday reaches out to him, he awakens to find himself in the roadside attraction called the Wolf Den Cavern. I tried to look this up to see if it was a real roadside attraction, but I couldn't find anything, so if you know of a real Wolf Den Cavern, let me know in the comments. Tyr reveals his plot to Shadow, explaining that it wasn't only Demeter that caused the rift between him and Wednesday. He recalls the story of how Fenrir the Wolf bit off his hand, saying this occurred back when he, not Odin, was the lord of the Norse gods. In history, it is thought that Tyr was a much more important Germanic god before the Viking Age. However, over time, Odin became the Allfather, the king of the Norse gods. As Tyr explains, in Norse mythology, Loki's child, Fenrir the Wolf, only agreed to be bound if he could have some insurance, and that insurance was Tyr's hand being placed in his mouth, which of course he bit off when he realized he could not escape. Tyr is still resentful that Odin usurped his position, as he says Odin has paid no price for this, so he intends to exact his revenge by torturing and killing Odin's son. Tyr says he intends to use this scaffold to splay Shadow's ribs open, likely a reference to the Old Norse method of execution called the Blood Eagle, and at the top of this he even places a sculpture of an eagle. In an earlier breakdown I was wondering what this sculpture was, but now I believe it's the eagle that sits atop Yggdrasil, the world tree, that has a hawk who sits between its eyes. Apparently Tyr was going to use this to perform the Blood Eagle on Shadow. However, Wednesday shows up and Tyr admits that he was the one killing Odin's followers rather than Johan. Wednesday seems to offer his life in exchange for Shadow's, which Tyr agrees to. As Wednesday says,
Tyr's honesty is his biggest weakness.
Of course, Wednesday doesn't abide by this. Using his necklace, the symbol of Thor's hammer, Wednesday summons some rune magic and transports himself, Tyr, and Shadow to the backstage, where they have an epic Norse god battle. Tyr even has the upper hand at one point until Shadow steps in to save his father. As Tyr turns his attention to Shadow, he says the death he will give Shadow is merciful compared to... and he doesn't get to finish because Wednesday runs him through. I think he was going to say compared to what your father is going to do with you. Then returning back from the backstage, Wednesday burns the body of Tyr and also his eagle sculpture. Wednesday even uses some rune magic to hide the remains, or perhaps he's banishing Tyr from Midgard. Then Wednesday says he's proud of the man Shadow has become. However, Shadow doesn't seem too happy with this. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Selim goes to the Jamboree at the Peacock Inn and is finally able to accept his own sexuality and also finally let the djinn go. He and the quote hot bellhop, Kai, get it on, and the next morning when Laura asks about his djinn sweater, he says he lost it, which I'm sure means that he has let go of the djinn. At this point, Laura also says that they should separate for safety, as the new gods will be after her for failing to kill Wednesday, but Selim says he won't live in fear anymore. Incidentally, their room number at the inn here is 401, which as an angel number represents elevating your state of mind to a more positive outlook, a state that Selim reaches by the end of the episode. At the end of the episode, we also see Selim praying, which means he's found his faith again. After leaving Wednesday, it seems Shadow will go back to Lakeside. However, when he sees this poster of a mother and child animated, it inspires him to go to Jacksonville, Florida instead. I believe this might be his attempt to track down Marguerite's son, Sandy. Sam Blackwell said that he is supposedly with his father in Florida, so I think Shadow is going there to try and see if he can find him. Or it could have something to do with his other half, which was hinted at in the previous episode. After having given up on Liam Doyle coming back from the Horde, Laura also decides to let go. She lets go of Sweeney's ashes, dumping them into this river, and finally starting the grieving process. However, as she does this, Liam returns from the Horde, saying he was held up by a 12-foot puka. Puka are a mythological creature from Irish mythology that are thought to be shapeshifters and to cause mischief, as this one did. He even makes a kind of subtle reference, calling the puka a real Harvey, which is a reference to the 1950 film and play of the same name, in which only the protagonist can see a large rabbit-like creature which he believes is a puka. Despite this, Liam was able to retrieve the spear, which he now realizes is GUNGNIR, Odin's spear. He asks Laura what she plans to do with it, and she says she's going to kill Wednesday.
I'm gonna kill Wednesday.
And based on the preview for next episode, she will attempt to do this then. We see this image of her attempting to throw the spear at Wednesday, but something tells me she won't manage to kill him. That is the end of the episode, and as always, I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode in the comments below. Were you entertained by it, and are you excited for the final 2 episodes? Also, did you notice an Easter egg or reference that I missed? If so, please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out my American Gods playlist and my breakdown of Neil Gaiman's Coraline, linked on the screen. Also, don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my next breakdown of American Gods next week. Thanks for watching, and until next time,